Laura, can you tell me a little bit about what you're doing at DePauw to develop effective and engaged citizens?
Sure. Well, certainly students got very excited and engaged about the 2020 presidential election. And in fact, we had some of the highest voter participation rates across the country. So kudos to our team in our Civic Engagement Center for doing everything that they thought was important to get students focused on voting. And we've also spent a lot of time talking with students about the value of the principles of freedom of expression through our orientation programs, through various lectures on campus, through the adoption of a statement of values around freedom of expression.
And John, how about you?
Well, like Laura, we've been very active in this space. Of course, we're named for the father of the U.S. Constitution at James Madison University.
You have no choice.
It's sort of in our DNA,
That's
right? And civic engagement is one of the cornerstones of our strategic plan. So we have a James Madison Center for Civic Engagement that leads these efforts with faculty and students across campus. We have people who are sort of the evangelists that work with all the different colleges to try to incorporate civic engagement into learning in every academic discipline, and we have a lot of models of debates and discussions and dialogue about the difficult issues of our time, and the students actually really appreciate the opportunity to be engaged and involved.
Then what do you both think is the role of higher education in developing, engaged, effective citizens?
Well, I think higher education has a really important role to play, and actually the founders thought so too, interestingly enough. They knew that you needed educated citizens if we were going to do that hard work of becoming a more perfect union. It was the responsibility of every generation, and that starts with education, because learning is actually a lot about active listening, right? We learn from and with each other, and so I think we really need to be those places in society that can model how you bring diverse people together, diverse perspectives that can learn with each other and solve problems together.
That's a
John,
point.
I agree with you, and I think about my own childhood. I grew up in the San Francisco Bay Area, right in the city of San Francisco, in this wonderfully diverse neighborhood with kids and families, different ethnicities, religious traditions, ideologies, and I assumed the whole world was like my neighborhood that I grew up in. And it wasn't until I went off to college that I realized that I was fairly unique. And as I interact with my students today, sadly, students come to us from resegregated communities where they live in neighborhoods where folks look like them, they think like them, they have the same economic standing. And so higher ed, particularly a residential campus community like the two campuses that we lead, is one of the few places in America left where folks are able to come together from different backgrounds, cultures, ideologies, and wrestle with the messiness of what it means to be a democratic community.
And how do you think higher ed is doing in trying to meet that goal?
It's always a work in progress, right? But I think if it's going to happen anywhere, it has to happen on our campuses. We have to be that beacon for society to show how this can be done. And yes, it is messy. You're going to deal with controversies. That should be expected in higher education, right? And I actually think it's a success when people are disagreeing, as long as we can do it with civil discourse and model how that's done. But a university should be a place where there are controversies in some sense, because you should be hearing from a variety of perspectives, including some less popular perspectives and perspectives that challenge the status quo. So I actually think universities are doing a lot better than many people realize. Every day there are important discussions and dialogues happening in the classroom and outside the classroom as well. I see it and hear it all the time from our students.
I agree with that, and diversity is really a necessary condition for us to be able to have these really rich and challenging conversations. And I think often folks from the outside see the controversy that arises when a speaker that all of us don't agree with comes to campus. But that's really part of the debate, and as I said, the messiness of wrestling what it means for us to be a diverse democracy.
To get that right.
Right, absolutely.
That's right.
Absolutely.
What do you see as your individual role, right? Not just as an individual, right? You're the president of each of these institutions. What do you do and need to do in order to move that forward?
Well, I think what's really important is for us to value the diversity of perspectives and ideas, and be really upfront and center that that's part of a liberal education. And I think presidents have to lift their voice to underscore that we very much want all of the ideas to flow at our institutions, inside of the classroom, outside of the classroom, that we're not going to shy away from controversial topics, and to let students know that that's really part of the educational enterprise.
Yeah, I agree with Lori. We have to model and talk about our values and our mission with lots of different constituencies, both on and off campus, because many times people in the general public don't necessarily see what's really happening on college campuses. They hear caricatures of what's actually going on. And I think it's our responsibility to constantly reinforce those values and to talk about the messiness of higher education and why it's necessary for real learning.
We're gonna say
I was just saying that, and I'm so hopeful about young people, because they come to our campuses because they want to learn, they want to engage, and they want to make the world a better place.
Yeah, that's what we hear when students come in at orientation. I get the sense that they want to develop that sense of agency. They want to make a difference in the world, but they don't quite know how. And that's part of our job, to give them the tools and the skills to be able to do that, regardless of the major that they select.
Yeah, I love that. Our speaker last night actually was, when asked, like, what gives you hope? We talked about the fact that young people give us such great hope, but within the construct you just talked about, John, is we have to have a scaffolding around this, right, and around them to really develop them.
Absolutely.